people on the call. I think everybody's been here before us. We've all got the invitations. We all know that this meeting is being recorded. And speaking of recording, I think Alexis, you're kicking. I see that that's been kicked off. For today's call, we have two main areas of focus. One of them is Dr. Matt King is going to walk us through the configuration of CPRS in Avicenna, specifically with an eye towards Dr. Volp's standardized clinical reminders for low-dose CT scanning and such. So this is of keen interest to all of us. And then after that, in the time remaining, somebody will walk us through Ricardo's documents showing the changes that are being made to the intake form and the background form. So I think for the moment, what we want to do is set up Matt as sharing. So,
okay, I'm ready for that. Let's see what I can do.
Let's see, Alexis, as the launcher of the meeting, you might need to be the one that gives Matt the ability to share.
Okay. Change role to presenter. How's that, Matt?
I think so. Let me try.
If you go to...
There we go.
There you go.
See my screen now?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Great. Okay, well, what I thought...
Matt, your audio's a little quiet, so move both closer to the microphone.
Yeah, okay, I'm doing that now. You guys hear me okay?
Maybe a little closer, even. It's not
Alrighty. I thought what I'd do is just take a look from the CPRS view, because I know most of us aren't in there. Doctors, of course, are in there every day. It's their bread and butter. But this is what it looks like from their point of view. And let me go back to the patient selection screen, just so you know there's two parts to it. You can choose patients here, and you also get notifications. And once you choose your patient, depending on your configuration, you usually come into this cover sheet. And this cover sheet is sort of a snapshot of what's going on with the patient. What we're looking at today primarily is this big place in the middle that says clinical reminders. And in particular, we're going to look at three of them, which have to do with the low-dose CT scanning for lung cancer screening. And this little alarm clock up here, when you open that up and choose action, you can do a lot of things. So not everybody wants to see every single reminder that's been made. And depending on what you do and maybe what service you're working in, you can adjust those reminders right in this area, just so you know. And that's how they end up showing up here. And what reminders are basically these computerized messages that you get that tell you if a patient needs something or not. And you can see this patient, who is 65 years old, needs a tobacco pack year history screen. It says it's due now. And the reason for that is because there's a reminder that says, gee, everyone between 55 and 80 who hasn't had one of these things should get one. And so that part is all done on the Vista side, but this is what it looks like here. And so the way to respond to that is you start here on the Notes tab. And again, this is a lot of where doctors spend their time, is on the Notes and the Orders tab. And in this case, we're going to go to this Notes section. I'm going to choose this Lung Cancer Screening note title. And when that happens, I get an extra drawer that opens up here. Actually, two of them. I get an encounter drawer, in a reminders drawer, and I always had this template drawer, but I'm going to look here at this template drawer, and I can see this PAC year history is what we call a reminder dialogue, okay? And in this PAC year history reminder dialogue, they just ask some questions. Now, these are radial buttons, meaning that you can only choose one of these, so they toggle, right? So let's say this person's a current smoker. So what happens when you choose on current smoker is it opens up and it's going to want to know how many years has the patient smoked. And let's just pick a bunch, say 25. And then they ask the average number of packs per day over the entire time. So let's just say 2, so a lot. There's other things we can do. We can say that the patient's a former cigarette smoker but now quit. We can say that the patient can't fill this out or declines, won't let us. There's other things, patient never smoked, etc. If you look closely at this template, what you'll see is that there's really three different windows here. So there's the template window that we all work in. The second window, the middle window, is what actually gets written into your note as you're clicking boxes and typing text and what have you. The third window is a window that stores data that gets stored as actual data back into a file somewhere in Vista. And in this case, you can see that there's 2 of them. There's actually 3 of them. There's 3 health factors. One is that the patient's a current smoker. The other is that somewhere we recorded packs per day. And another is that the number of years were recorded. So that's how this gets stored. And then when I click finish, it's going to ask me if I'm the person, and then when I sign it. So now what you're seeing here is that these health factors are embedded in the encounter portion of the note. And I'm going to sign this note. Ask me something I can't do, so I'm going to say no, and I'm going to sign it. So now that's part of the record. And if I refresh this information, go here, you see this PAC year history. It says do now. I'm going to go up to File and hit refresh, and you'll see it's going to calculate. Over here, you see this little thing going around, it's calculating, and you'll notice that that PAC year history is now gone, but in its place is the initial lung cancer screening reminder, and the reason for that is because this person has smoked a lot, 25 years, 2 packs a day, so the next step then would be for this person to get their screening done. And so again, we're assuming, you know, maybe a week later or whatever, they come back, or it actually could be the same day, I suppose. In any case, we're going to need a new note. So we're going to grab a new note. I'm just going to use the same note title, but this time I'm going to choose the initial lung cancer screening here. I'm going to double click on that. Now there's a number of ways these can be configured. They can actually pop up automatically when you choose the note title, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff you can do, but I haven't done that yet. What you'll notice right away, though, is that there's an object. It's the smoking history object, and it already tells me, you know, without me having to search this patient's notes at all, how many years the patient has smoked, and how many packs per day this person has smoked. So that was brought in as an object from my note that I made from before. That's how it got there. And now what I can do is this fairly simple note. Again, you can see radial buttons, meaning you can only choose one of these. And our choices are, number one is that there are no clinical exclusions and the patient can go to lung cancer screening. And that's probably going to be a majority of these patients. There's a couple of other ones. The patient is not a candidate due to some reason. It could be that they already have lung cancer or they have some symptoms that are suggestive of cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes they just age out. So they may have had a smoking history, but this is only going up to age 80, so maybe they just turned age 81 or something, so now there's nothing there. Notice it tried to bring something in. It says no data available here, and that would be if a person quit. Also, if they quit for greater than 15 years, it would tell you right here the year that they quit, if that had been in my other note, that they'd actually quit smoking. So this stuff gets brought in. In this case, we're going to say that there's no exclusions. And there's a couple things that could happen. They could have already had a chest CT, in which case there's an opportunity to document the date of that. And the date's important because these would be yearly kinds of exams. So you'll notice down here where we're looking at health factors, there's a historical health factor down here, and that will get stored at the date that this, if I were to put something in here, it would get stored then, not the date of the note. And that's important to see because obviously that's the important date, not the date that I recorded it. Here is that the patient agrees to lung cancer screening. Information is provided in a low-dose CT scan will be ordered. In this case, then, we probably want to go ahead and order. So what we've done is embedded. You can see here now that there's an order that's popping up, that when I close this, when I click Finish, that order is going to come up and allow me to go ahead and order it right then and there without me having to go to the Orders tab and find the right order and all that. So it sort of reduces your chance of ordering the wrong thing, because there's a lot of different types of CT scans, and this is a very particular type of CT scan. So you want those two to do that. You can also refer for lung cancer if you have some sort of screening coordinator. And I did configure a consult service for that and wrote an order for that too. If that's what we were going to do, then this consult order would pop up when I clicked Finish instead of this one here. So now I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. And let's see, you want to see any more things we can do. The patient declines cancer screening for this year only. When that happens, you'll notice that you get this. That will turn it off for just a year. If they say, no, I never want to do this, never ask me again, then this turns it off indefinitely. Those reminders we're talking about that appear on the front of the chart. That's when we're talking about turning things on and off, that's what we're talking about. And so, but we're going to go ahead and order this. So I'm going to click Finish. And you'll see this is sort of going around and around here waiting. And hopefully, so here's our order. And you can see when you do these kind of orders here, you can actually bring in information. Like I've configured this order so that the patient's age comes in, and also, again, their pack year history is very important as part of it. And I put like, oh, we want it in 7 days and stuff. We can change that, of course. And then when you're happy with what the order looks like, you just accept the order. And then if you come up here and refresh patient information, then what comes up is a screen that allows you to sign all this stuff at once. So it shows that I've got health factors that are going to be coming in. If I wasn't finished with my note, I could uncheck that, and but I want to sign all of this all at once. So I'm going to go ahead and sign it, and that order now. No, I can't do that. That order is now. If we go to the Orders tab, we'll see that that is now in the pending state. Now, what will happen is that goes to the CT clinic, and if you double click on this, you can see which one called computed tomography -2, and person's going to drive there, and we're requesting 7 days from today. And what will happen is they'll receive this and make any changes they need to, and this will go from the status of pending to active or scheduled or whatever. And so that's how this stuff works. And you know, the next thing is in a year's time, we'll get another. So this should go away when I refresh this information. Because it's been done. Ooh, there's something wrong with it. So once this is done, it should actually go away. I'll have to find out why it didn't. But basically, that'll go away, and then in a year's time, the other one will come up. So you can access that information from here and see down here the cohort logic and then the resolution logic. Oh. I think it's, until it's scheduled, I don't think it'll close, so that's probably the reason why. Anyway, that's what we've got so far in this database. Questions?
Thank you, Matt, for walking us through that.
Yeah, I hope it was at the right pace. I feel like I was going a little quick, but I know you guys, probably most of you know this already, so.
Hey, Matt, this is Drew Moganaki. I think I'm the only other VA clinician on this call. Is that right?
I don't know.
Well, nice to meet you. I think this is lovely. As you know, and others on the call know, I mean, this is the system that is currently installed at, I think, 15 to 20 VA medical centers. And it's a system that we've been aware of. And I think the demo probably, it would have been nice if this had occurred a lot earlier so we would know kind of where the starting point is. In my travels, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, when I speak with users of this system, everyone, almost everyone, if not everyone, says it would be nice if it was a lot easier to use. Has that been your experience?
Well, disclaimer here, I'm a doctor, but I'm not a VA doctor. I use Vista in I use an open source Vista in a mental health hospital in Raleigh. And by the way, we're looking for a good VA programmer if anybody wants to come work with us. But
I don't see a lot of people just yet.
I can't tell you how awkward it's been for anybody, to be honest.
So let me share with everybody. So I don't know if awkward's the word. Like, it gets the job done, but it's a lot of clicks. You know, I think for our developers, you know, if it was too fast, this is being recorded. They can go back and watch again. And you know, the ask, I guess, that Rick and I have had from the beginning and discussed with Rick Marshall as well and everybody else is, you know, can we create a system that's more efficient, faster, kind of more, you know, a more efficient user interface. There's another piece of all of it as well, which is that, so we've been piloting a brand new system from scratch at the Phoenix VA, and the team there is fully aware of all of this as well. And, you know, through kind of several years of looking at it, et cetera, came up with something that borrows some of these techniques, but also abandons some of these techniques. And one of the reasons is what you just demoed shows the process when the patient's actually being referred from primary care. So at least at Phoenix and maybe some other VAs, there actually is, apologize for the siren in the background. There has been some challenges with the primary care not necessarily being all in to send patients in. So what's been developed in Phoenix kind of doesn't capture that, and therefore what you just demoed might help future expansion VAs for the project that do want to have primary care refer patients. But I think it would be really instructive if we could get you to see what's been developed in Phoenix to help kind of boil it down and present it to this group. Have you had a chance to see what's been developed in Phoenix?
No, I haven't, and I'd love to, I'll tell you that. And I'll tell you another big limitation of this is that on the, you know, you only see these reminders when you're looking in the patient record. And what you really need is a way to know the patients that need this when they're not in front of you necessarily. And you can, you know what I mean? You need to be able to track patients without having to go into every single chart and taking a look. And
that's correct. Now, are you familiar with how the health factors are sending all this to CDW and they're using Report Manager to track?
Well, we don't do that here, but we have ways of doing it, you know, of building reports and showing it. But I'm sure that's what you're talking about.
I would love to connect you so you could become, you know, more subject matter expert on that system that's currently being used. And the NCP, the National Center for Prevention and Promotion of Health, whatever it's called down in Durham, uses this to track at multiple sites. We've got a few experts, so we'll definitely touch base later, but you know, that's also a system that we've considered and we thought was rather, maybe it's cumbersome, maybe it's something we want to take advantage of from an IT structure. So all of these tasks that you showed get tagged, they get sent to TDW, and they use an SQL process to pull it into Report Manager. So Report Manager is TRM approved and available at all VA medical centers. And the system, it was developed by Vision 23, also known as the Minneapolis system. And while it's nice, it's really just keeping track of kind of appointments and tasks being completed or not. A clock starts. So patients basically live in different silos. Either they've been selected for screening until that, you know, kind of like a clinical reminder, until that task is finished, they sit in that reminder. And after some certain number of days on the Report Manager output, you know, it turns red. And then when that task is completed, then they move to a next silo, which has, you know, a clock ticking. Let's say that the scan has to be done. And until the scan is done, you know, it just sits there. And then when the scan is done, there's a diagnostic code that the radiologist has added. And then the patient moves into the next bin, which is have they been informed or has, you know, someone processed that diagnosis by the radiologist. And then from there it gets closed out. And then they go into the next bin, which is, you know, the next scan, whether if it's a 3 or 6 month follow-up scan or whether it's a 1 year follow-up scan. So I think it'd be good, for everyone to understand that, you know, if they don't already, you know, these systems that currently exist and what they're being used so that we can build upon it. Because the overall mission of this VA PALS project was that, yes, there already is a system that works, but we're going to build something that's much leaner, more efficient, and then ultimately doesn't have to use indirect tags and will actually go into a more of a relational database for analytic purposes down the road.
Well, I'd certainly like to see what's there now and really understand it better. It sounds pretty good, but you're right. You know, there's a lot of handoffs, and in every handoff, it's very easy for the patient to get lost, and you can't just rely on going into the chart for that. You need a system So.
Yeah, and ultimately we felt that also it's not scalable. As far as we understand, there are no VA centers that are monitoring more than just maybe 1,000, 1,500 patients. So if they truly want to get up into the 5-digit realm, it was felt that a more efficient system was required, which I hope we can deliver.
Very good. Thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Do you have other questions, comments for Dr. King? Hearing none, let's turn to the second half of our presentation today, which is George Lilly would like to walk us through the feedback that we got from Phoenix and the Mount Sinai folks on changes that they'd like to see to the intake and background forms. We have some documents that Rick Avila's provided to us. And if Alexis, if we could pass the talking stick over to George, then he can walk us through the presentation and talk us through the implications.
Okay, I think that's done.
Okay, let's see. I'm sure you can't see my screen yet. Let me see if I can share my screen.
There it is.
Okay, you see my screen?
We do.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. That was great. And I'd like to, these are documents we just got this weekend, and we're still working through them and trying to understand what they mean and how we can implement it. So, you know, I'm not going to go through kind of a final interpretation now. I thought it would be very valuable today to go through these charts and talk through what we think they mean, and get some discussion on that. Some of the things are easy, some of the things are subtle. So why don't we? This is the first page. Let's see if I can get it to advance to the next page. Okay. Comments on the home page. This is the. We had a mock-up of a pie chart with project-wide statistics here, and that it's desired to be removed so that the individual sites aren't going to be looking at project-wide statistics. These were meant as mock-ups, and I don't even know what reports or other items need to be entered and need to be put onto the home page eventually. But we're certainly going to take that off, and that's easy to do. So that's the only comment on the home page, as that'll be going away. I think. Okay. On the now the form list page, we've been calling this the case review page, and now it's going to be called the form list page. Over here, we're going to instead of using a study ID for the patient, we're going to be putting their Social Security number. And apparently, for those of you who think that you're not supposed to use Social Security numbers to identify patients, I've been told that the VA has an exemption from that, and they can use the SSN here to identify the patient. So over here is going to be the SSN. We're going to include middle initials, and actually we're going to display, we're talking about doing is displaying the name, last name, comma, first name, space, middle initial, just like it's shown in Vista, instead of having 3 columns, or here. So, and for MRN, this is something we can't really figure out yet. We used to have the MRN, which would of the patient, the medical record number was on the original form, LCAP forms. And this is saying that we should change it to facility code, and we're not sure what facility code means. There are 3-letter abbreviations for each site that we know about, because we were going to use them in the study ID as the first 3 letters. And right now we're thinking that that's what we're going to put here, because there are other identifiers for a Vista site. There's a site code, there's There's a number of different ones, and we're not sure which of any of those it means. So for now, we're going to have 3 letters that represent the site as we had agreed for the study IDs. So what is Rick, is Phoenix PHX? Or it's,
Yes.
Right, so PHX would be here in every line. And of course, the dates are going to change to be, they didn't mark it on here, but one of the changes we're making is the date formats are going to be of the, it's going to be month / day / year. And we get rid of the letters here, which is a standard format that they see in Vista, that are used in Vista. So we're going to change from these LCAP dates to the Vista dates in format. Let's see. Any questions, discussion, insights on this? I'll editorialize a little bit here if no one minds. This page with is really a revolutionary, not revolutionary. It's very interesting page. It's kind of the history. It contains the history of what's been done for this patient on the topic of lung cancer screening, and it reminds me of a new set of pages that some projects are putting in for Vista projects, which they call cascades. So, for example, I think breast cancer screening, that project is putting in a cascade. There's some help. Some of the mental health packages are putting in cascades. And what it does is it draws from Vista all of the events, all the relevant events that are relevant to the topic for the patient, and it shows them historically. So, if we had, if someone had put in health factors like Dr. King was just showing into a patient's record, we could actually record when they could be added to this page, and they could be lines on the page which would say what date was what thing done for this patient, or what health factor appeared. And if there are when diagnoses are being made, they could be put on the screen, so you know at what date a diagnosis was made and what the diagnosis was. I mean, you could conceptually expand this to include data pulled from Vista. So this is right now. It's basically showing the forms, the VA PALS forms that are filled out for the patient, and those are indicative of. I mean, obviously, if you have CT evaluations, you had a CT scan then, but this page could evolve to more of a cascade kind of report, possibly, if we were to pull existing, if we were to know what the information was to pull from Vista and to pull it. So, and the health factors the health factors and other things that Matt was demoing might give us a prototype of that, should we want to go there. So that's. Those are my editorial. Anybody have any reaction to that? Drew, do you think that's a good idea?
I do. I find this innovative. Nice.
Yeah, I think it goes along with some of the kinds of tools that are being built for other kinds of screening applications in the VA. So I don't know. So we can certainly talk about that, but we're going to go through very quickly. We're going to make these changes that are here to show them, and we're also going to, and hopefully Matt's going to give us some test patients with those health factors that we have, so that we can actually demonstrate pulling things from Vista and then including them in our VA PALS screens in different places. So that the potential of prototyping that will exist. So I'm going to go on then to the intake form. And this one is interesting. Well, they're all interesting, but this one has brought up lots of questions. So the contact info. These, if you look at the format of this contact info and of the smoking history, you'll recognize it from what Matt just was demonstrating on CPRS. This is pretty clearly a screen clip or a cutout from a CPRS page. This looks like a CPRS page, and as Matt was demonstrating, usually when you click on one of these things, it expands out, and what it expands out to is not shown on these pages. So we're needing to interpret, what is it to include this contact information? What does that mean? And so what I think what we're doing now is we are going back to there were places in the old intake form, not old, but I mean in the VA PALS intake form, the one that we're changing, that had places for phone numbers, and they actually had a place for you to put the phone number. So the format of this letter set and what date was it sent or whatever. I mean, there's information we have, which I think we're pulling in. We're actually using the formats for this information and putting it here in the intake form up front.
Hey, George.
Yes,
this is Matt. I have a question. Is there any way we can get the PRD file on this? Because we could then install it on our own system.
Boy, I wish we could. I mean, this is we've asked for it, and we haven't been able to get it yet. So I would love to be able to install on our system the same reminders, the new system that Drew talked about that they're piloting in Phoenix.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's you can email PRD files. They're very easy.
Yeah, I know. I would love to. I'm hopeful that we can, over time, we can get that they'll see their way clear to giving us a copy. Maybe if we can motivate people to say that, we'll do great things with it if we get it, maybe they'll send it to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, ideally what we'd have is we would know what information was in the patient's chart from those reminders that from the new reminders that they're doing, and which health factors are there. We'd be able to pull them in, and we'd be able to maybe for some of the pre-populate a lot of these things from Vista. So the phone number, I'm sure we're going to try to pull in from Vista. Letters sent and received. I don't know if there'll be health factors in Vista for that or not. The primary care provider, which I think here is what PCP means. I think if it's in Vista, we ought to be able to identify it, and so it'll be more than a check mark. It'll be actually a name, etc. So, and then of course, then this down here, similarly, when you click on one of these things, in CPRS, obviously it opens up and gives you more fields to fill out. So at least a number. I think these are each two of them are numbers, and one is you select. In the demo you saw, you had 1.1, 1.5. You had numbers in a 0.5 kind of range. So hopefully maybe we can do that as the expansion of this. And the lung cancer diagnosis, if applicable. I mean, this is something if it exists in Vista, we should be pulling it and displaying it. So this one is, you know, there's a lot of interpretation we need to do on this page to get the intake form right. And I think our approach is going to be to do our interpretation quickly and get something up and running quickly, and then have it to show that that the team can look at it and see, is that what we meant, or do we want that changed? So we'll try to iterate on it with our best, you know, just our best judgment on it. Oh yes, and the priors. The prior, so you probably want to have, and this is again something, if there were priors that we could pull from Vista, it would be good to have that pulled here and put down. And obviously, you would pull what you could from Vista, but you'd also have an option for someone to click on the box and to enter a date and location where a prior was done if it wasn't done in Vista. Then we go to page 2, where we're adding this shared decision making. This looks like just a checkbox. Yes, it was done. I can't interpret anything else from that. I know this paragraph is, you know, it's important to have a positive acknowledgement that it was done, and this text is going to be, you know, important to go into the report or the note. And this is this section here is where, if you know, in Matt's demo, you actually could get a quick order and actually order it right here. But this is reporting whether it was ordered or not. And again, if that information could be pulled from Vista, that would be good. And but obviously, if it can't be, or if it's not, you'll have these choices: no, yeah, no, not at this time, and yes. Then the next page shows what's being asked as an example report inserted into the note. And we did some careful reading of this. This is a report that, you know, according to the spec here, it goes to notes and it adds a visit. And there's going to be a lung cancer screening for each Vista location. What we're seeing here is an actual note out of CPRS is what we can, you know, it's got a note title, it's got the standard title it came from, it's got the date of the note, the entry date, the author, etc. This is, we recognize this as what CPRS formats as a note. So, and these notes are complex in that these contains objects, which are the health factors, and their associated numeric values. So these are so when we talk about, I mean, obviously from the responses that we just talked about putting on the intake form, we could generate this textual report, and you know, here's the big paragraph that came on decision making, and these things down at the bottom, I don't think we can derive by those from the checkboxes we have. We don't have all this information, but maybe we are. Anyway, I think we could generate that possibly from those checkboxes. But when we try to insert this into Vista, the question is, will it go into Vista as objects or as just a textual note? I mean, obviously, when this is using the reminders package, you're putting in part of these things are text and part of these things are pointers to objects, which are the health factors, which are computable in part of the patient record. So the big open question is, how well can we do this? task of finding out what clinic, generating an encounter, and generating a note for that encounter, and inserting the TIU note with the health factors, and having it so that when you printed out the note that we generate, it would look like this, and it would be pulling in objects from Vista like this. So the question, that's a major question. I don't know. We're doing research right now. We're trying to explore, are there RPCs we can use we know that the mental health package and a couple other packages in Vista do do create encounters and create notes. It's possible they may even have the ability to insert health factors. And so but I'm not sure that they can actually insert notes that are which include those health factors. So there's we don't know what the APIs look like yet, but we're looking into it. Right now, what we're thinking of doing is just trying to generate this text and at least initially look at trying to insert that text as a textual TIU note, even if it's not tied to the objects in Vista.
Now that looks good. You know, interestingly, the TIU objects in Vista, the ones that I make and the ones that show up in these notes, are actually stored in the exact same file as the notes themselves.
Yeah.
Under a different name, so it seems like you could reach them.
Well, certainly, if we're assuming that we can write code that gets installed on the Vista system, and we can write code in months to get at that, I think it would be possible to do that. But if we're trying to do it with RPCs, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, and the hard part is if you're doing this node outside of Vista and you want to put a health factor into, you know, the V health factor file or whatever, right. You know, you're gonna, that's a pretty hard thing to do too, I think.
Well, CPRS does it, right? So I don't know, which means that there are RPCs that can do it. They called the CPRS calls data to PCE using their RPCs, so it's possible that we can figure out how to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm sure you guys can figure it out, George. It's just not easy.
No, it's not easy. So.
Well, there's another open piece at the very bottom of this first note, the intake form, which is if you look at the last two lines, of here, scroll to the bottom.
Oh boy, let's see.
Let's see.
How do I scroll?
Looks like there you go. Right. So those last three lines are traditionally what you see for electronic signature codes that suggest that there was electronic signing that took place. And CPRS, of course, includes the ability to electronically sign a note. So there presumably must be remote procedures to support this. But we was certainly not originally part of our year one mandate to try to figure out how to implement electronically signing notes in the web interface. So it's an open question. What we're looking at here is like, how closely to this do we need to conform with what we're delivering for year one? We don't know yet. We need more input.
Let's see.
Back to you, George.
All right, yeah, I'm trying to, maybe it's here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now let's so that's the intake form. Anybody have comments about the intake form you want to make, besides what Rick did? So let's go to the background form, the spec changes for the background form. What they're saying is we're going to remove all the tabs and all the data fields except medical history. So the only thing the background form will contain will be the medical history tab. And the entire background form itself is going to be optional. You're going to be required to do an intake form, but you'll go to the new form. In order to add a background form, you'll go to a new form and say I want to add a background form. It'll be optional. So instead of our current system, we pre-fill both an intake and a background form for each patient when they become part of the system, and we're assuming that both were required. So this is it's not a hard change. It's just we're going to simplify the form and then make it optional. And here's the example of the medical history tab. So I guess that will be the entirety of the background form. Yeah, it goes down for 2 pages. So it's still, it's still a substantial form. The background form was huge before. So now reducing it down to this 1 tab will make it still large, but not that large. And that's the, obviously the background form was a place where we were looking to try to pull information from VISTA to suggest where treatment, the answers to some of these questions and the dates. And we'll continue in that effort to see if we can get some of this information. But right now, this first version is going to have just background form reduced to this medical history tab. So that's pretty much what that is the end of the specification document for our new changes. We'll be doing these as quickly as we can. Maybe by next week we'll be able to show our first take on it and be able to examine it. Any questions, discussion about this?
I guess I might also add that while we're working on overhauling these pages, the home page, the form list page, the intake form, and the background form, in parallel, our user experts at Phoenix and Mount Sinai are going to continue to meet looking at the CT evaluation form and the follow-up form. So we're expecting something like by the end of May, getting a similar document like this describing the overhaul that they'd like to see of those two forms as well. So we're going through an interesting process. And it's the kind of thing that you hope for with medical software development. Is you're really looking for that kind of guidance and feedback from the people who are going to use the software to make sure that it's actually usable and pleasure. That it's a pleasure for them to use rather than a pain. So we understand that the back and forth is a necessary and desirable part of the process.
This is true. I always appreciate you making it fun. It is a fun process on both sides. I have good news along this line. We are probably going to be able to get a handful of really knowledgeable people to give feedback at the OSEHRA Summit. And a continuous modification has deemed beneficial for the next year.
Oh, that's good news. Thanks, Drew.
That's very good news. Yeah.
We're trying to find the best people, including one of the lead developers for that system that Matt demoed from the National Center. Also some users who are using it out in the field, and then also our team from Phoenix and future users, so that as we all know for implementation, the people who are going to be using, we need to make sure that they appreciate and like what they're being asked to use.
That's great. Thank you, Drew. Thanks for arranging that. Well, are there any final questions? I see we're coming up on the end of the hour. Any final questions, comments, or concerns before we wrap up today's call? Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
I'm making progress on this. Oh, I'm finding the instructions a little confusing, but